Discover 7 amazing life lessons revealed, an incredible journey towards transformative peace. A gust of wind whirled around Sarah Bennett as she wrestled with the dusty attic door, the creak echoing through her small Midwestern home. The golden sun streamed through the window, illuminating decades of forgotten memories stacked in cardboard boxes. Today wasn't just another Saturday, it felt more like an ultimatum. She could either bury herself in the mundane or unearth something that might change her narrative. Fighting against the weight of her responsibilities, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped into the dim light, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and dread. Clearing away a thick layer of dust, she stumbled upon an old family journal. The cover was worn, the spine cracked just like her hopes. Hesitation clawed at her as she flipped through the yellowed pages. Each entry was a glimpse into her grandfather's life, a brilliant inventor crushed by betrayal. Waves of disappointment crashed over her as she imagined the dreams he had, snatched away, replaced by the mundane shackles she felt herself trapped in. She was a simple librarian, which felt woefully inadequate compared to his emboldened ambition that now condemned her. "I'm not him," she whispered, fighting back the guilt of stumbling through life, feeling the weight of her late father's expectations. Did her grandfather's legacy weigh on her? His brilliant ideas never came to fruition because of greed, something she wrestled with in her own life. Somehow, the thought that she might not only replicate his failures but also become a part of his narrative haunted her. Biting her lip, she pushed the thoughts aside, unwilling to accept the darkness that clung to her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now, let us continue. The tension inside her began to simmer as she uncovered more stories of triumph overshadowed by decay. How could she mold her artistic talents into something meaningful against the unyielding tide of economic hardship in her community? The dreams of those around her faded to whispers, crippled by barriers she was painfully aware of. Could she be the one to actually breathe life back into her grandfather's lost legacy? But then, doubt seeped in. Wasn't she just a librarian at heart? Suddenly, a face from her past invaded her thoughts. Samantha. A rival who had once basked in privilege, she could threaten everything Sarah might dare to achieve. Would she twist her grandfather's story into ridicule and allow her fear of failure to suffocate her ambitions? Sarah's hands trembled as she wrestled with overwhelming emotions. She could almost feel the suffocating grip of expectation wrapped tightly around her throat. Just as she gathered courage to confront her fears, a nagging whisper from her grandfather's past surged back. Intruding doubts tied her family's legacy to the very greed she despised. It was a costly mistake, one that could haunt not only her but the future of her children. Could anything truly be salvaged? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the attic with shadows, Sarah was left standing on the precipice of change, filled with a crushing uncertainty. Her heart thundered in her chest. Time was running out, and the weight of her family's history loomed heavy. Would she succumb to the demands of the past or rise against the tides threatening to drown her future? Sarah stood in the attic, the weight of her ancestors pressing heavily against her chest. She could choose to let their burdens crush her aspirations, or she could ascend with the hope of reconstructing a legacy. Clenching the journal, she felt its potential, an echo of her grandfather's discarded dreams revitalizing her own. It was time to decide: would she succumb to her fears or embrace a riskier path toward creation? Determined, she curled her fingers around the journal. The pages seemed to whisper to her, urging her to transform the fear that had long married inactivity into her driving force for change. Recognizing that time was not a luxury she could afford, she made her way back downstairs, the transition from the musty attic to her sunlit living room solidifying her resolve to deviating from the familiar and predictable. In her mind, a plan began to form. She would host workshops for the local youth, combining literature and invention. The idea both thrilled and terrified her, igniting a flicker of excitement deep within. She envisioned children wrangling with words and mechanics, drawing inspiration from stories her grandfather's voice intertwining with her own, bridging past and present. But could she really pull this off? It would demand tremendous energy, resources, and confidence. Could she really challenge both herself and the ghosts of her grandfather's legacy? The thought sent shivers down her spine. Then, another face invaded her mind, Samantha. Would her rival seek to undermine her efforts, turning the children's excitement into mockery? With each step toward realization, the intensity of her emotion seemed to double. Guided by a sudden wave of courage, she opened her laptop and began drafting flyers. The clacking of the keys felt liberating, a rebellion against her doubts. This was not a meaningless endeavor, it could redefine her worth. But would the community respond? Would they believe in her vision? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across her walls. The juxtaposition between light and dark served as a metaphor for her own mental landscape. Clarity contrasted with uncertainty. In the risk of failure loomed potential opportunity. She could galvanize those around her or retreat once more into the silence of complacency. Days turned into nights as Sarah immersed herself in preparation. She navigated the complexities of logistics, securing a space, acquiring supplies, and crafting materials for the workshop. Each completed task brought her a step closer to transformation while simultaneously tightening the noose of self-doubt around her neck. As excitement bubbled within her, an unsettling thought emerged: what if nobody showed up? That fear gripped her, threatening to launch her back into an abyss from which she just began to surface. She couldn't let herself spiral, not now. She swore she would no longer be defined by her past. The specter of her grandfather's unfulfilled ambitions would serve as motivation, not an anchor. On the eve of her first workshop, Sarah found herself staring at the small number of RSVPs. The digits reflected back all her unease. It was a mere handful compared to the place she longed to cultivate. Could she hold space for such dreams with so little support? By morning, however, she decided. If only one child wanted to attend, she would make it worth their while. Each living being is a vessel of infinite potential. Making their journey matter meant challenging her doubts at every turn. As she prepared herself for the day ahead, purpose surged within her. Today mattered. Yet lingering apprehension nestled in the back of her mind, reminding her of the impending presence of Samantha. Determined to face whatever might come her way, Sarah took a deep breath and stepped outside, ready to embrace her destiny. Little did she know, this confrontation was only the beginning, and some truths were about to unravel that would change everything. Sarah awoke to the chime of her alarm, a stark reminder that today marked the culmination of her efforts. She moved, with some trepidation, through her morning routine, each action mechanically performed. The breakfast she prepared sat half-eaten, a reflection of the gnawing uncertainty in her gut. Her fingers found their way to the flyers laid out on the kitchen table, each one stark like her nerves ready to flutter into the hands of children wide-eyed with possibility. As she stepped outside, the air felt electric with anticipation. The sun's rays danced on her skin, casting aside the shadows of self-doubt that had plagued her for weeks. The workshop was not just an event, it was her chance at an entirely new beginning, a chance to redefine herself beyond the confines of her past. Arriving at the community center, Sarah froze for a moment, the familiar sights of the old building sparking memories of her childhood. But today was different. Today, she was not just a girl with big dreams suppressed by familial ghosts. She was a woman ready to elevate those dreams into reality. She set up the tables and chairs, aligning them with meticulous care. As she arranged markers and papers, her heart raced. What if Samantha showed up? What if she mocked everything Sarah had worked so hard to build? Determined to shake off the apprehension, Sarah took a deep breath and focused instead on what she could offer. A few children trickled in, their hesitant smiles igniting a flicker of warmth in her chest. They looked curious yet cautious, mirroring her own uncertainty. As more seats filled, Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her, even as the flutter of anxiety simmered beneath the surface. With the room alive with chatter, she introduced herself, her voice wavering but resolute. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to explore the magic of stories and inventions, how they intertwine to create something uniquely ours. As she spoke, she could see glimmers of interest in their eyes, and that encouraged her. Each question they posed, every giggle in response to a silly analogy, seemed to melt away her apprehensions. The initial tension began to dissolve, replaced by a buoyant enthusiasm that cracked the facade she had carefully built around her fears, yet, just as she felt herself gaining traction, the door swung open with a dramatic thud. Samantha swaggered in, an exaggerated smile plastered across her face like an ill-fitting mask. Sarah's heart sank, and her breath caught in her throat. "Wow, Sarah, great turnout. You really went all out," Samantha sneered, her voice saturated with mockery. For a moment, Sarah felt the weight of the past closing in on her, the cacophony of her insecurities threatening to suffocate her newfound purpose. But then, a stirring strength guided her thoughts. She realized that Samantha, standing there, reflected only a fragment of her own doubts. Instead of folding under the pressure, this was her moment to confront everything she had run from for too long. "Thank you, Samantha. I'm glad you're here," Sarah replied, summoning an unexpected steadiness. "I hope you'll join us. We could use your creativity." The children stared between them, sensing the electric tension in the air. Samantha's face flickered with surprise, then frustration at being cornered. Before she could retort, Sarah turned back to the group. Uncertainty writhed within her, but she pushed through. "Now, who is ready to dive into a story adventure?" As she led them through activities, weaving narratives that mixed invention with her grandfather's lessons, her confidence began to solidify. The children were fully engaged, lost in their creations, and for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt their collective energy ignite something powerful within her, but even as the laughter filled the room, the specter of Samantha loomed. Would she remain a distraction, or was she a catalyst for deeper change? Sarah sensed this workshop was merely a prelude to battles yet to come, battles that would test her foundations and her resolve. It was clear that she was facing more than just Samantha. She was ready to confront the uncertainties lurking in her soul. Each moment felt pivotal. Would she allow her fears to govern her once more, or would she choose to anchor herself in the possibilities ahead? With the workshop's energy heightening, Sarah recognized she was at a crucial juncture. The choice was no longer about the past, it was about who she would become in the face of testing storms. Little did she know, an even greater challenge awaited, a revelation that would force Sarah to confront her deepest fears and her most earnest desires. Sarah caught her breath, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread as she observed the children fully absorbed in their storytelling. The joyful laughter and spirited chatter buzzed around her, temporarily drowning out the lingering specter of Samantha. Each moment spent with these children was a step further into her own transformation, a subtle metamorphosis from the girl once confined by shyness and fear into a woman harnessing her true potential. With each tale they spun, Sarah discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She watched as their imaginations painted vivid landscapes and quirky characters, each creation echoing something buried within her. The weight of self-doubt that had plagued her earlier began to lift. This wasn't just a workshop, it was a platform to unearth her voice. Suddenly, a pointed laugh pierced through the air, jolting her focus. It came from Samantha, who had taken a seat at the back of the room, arms crossed, clearly reveling in her role as the observer. Sarah felt a flicker of old insecurities bubble up, threatening to curl her spine back into resignation. But something deep inside her resisted, igniting a defiant fire. This was her moment to reclaim not just the space but her narrative. "Okay, everyone," she interjected with a clarity that surprised even herself. "Let's take a moment to share our stories. Who wants to go first?" The room buzzed with energy, hands darting up excitedly, eager to share. Sarah moved from child to child, gently encouraging shy ones and amplifying the bold. As she listened, she found herself not just hearing words but feeling the spirit behind each tale, the fears, dreams, lessons learned. In those vibrant expressions, she found reflections of her own struggles, images of the hurdles she had faced that momentarily drew her away from her purpose. As the kids' stories unfolded, an intriguing realization began to settle in Sarah's mind. She caught a glimpse of her own narrative woven through their stories of adversity, bravery, and the desire for connection. She understood that the insecurity she had tethered herself to wasn't an immovable chain, it was merely a shadow, existing only when she chose to acknowledge its presence. Equipped with this insight, she decided to be more transparent, sharing a piece of her own journey. "You know," she said, drawing the children's attention back toward her, "I wasn't always confident about telling stories either. There were times I doubted myself, just like you might today. But when I found the courage to share, it changed everything for me." The children's eyes widened, captivated by her words. Sarah felt a thrill of empowerment. This was her opportunity to guide them, to tell them that it was their turn to rise above doubt. For the first time, Sarah saw herself not just as a facilitator but as a mentor, someone capable of instilling the same courage in others that she was discovering within herself. As the workshop progressed, she sensed a shift not only in her perspective but in the dynamics of the room. Even Samantha, who had started as a looming opponent, was slowly shifting in her seat, her expression softening as she watched the children thrive. It was as if Sarah's own growth was infectiously taking root, and she realized that the real power she possessed was in her ability to inspire. But just as the workshop reached its zenith, a sudden hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to Samantha, who had finally decided to make her voice heard. "So, Sarah," she drawled, the smirk returning to her face, "is this how you plan to be a leader? By pulling on heartstrings instead of skills?" The tension was palpable, the laughter dissipating as Sarah felt the walls disputing her vitality close in. In that moment, all her renewed confidence teetered on the edge. Could she stand firm against the challenge? Was sharing her vulnerabilities powerful enough to hold her ground? As the children exchanged looks of concern, Sarah felt the rising tide of doubt creep in yet again. This confrontation wasn't just about Samantha, it was about her ability to forge an identity in the face of adversity. Would she cower in the shadow of someone else's derision, or would she stand tall, grounded in her authenticity? In this defining moment, Sarah faced an urgent dilemma: would she embrace her newfound role, solidifying her path towards not just professional success but profound personal transformation? The answer buzzed through the air around her, but the uncertainty lingered, promising that this was only the beginning. The looming confrontation had sparked not just a question about herself, but the essence of the journey that lay ahead. As her thoughts spiraled around this revelation, she understood the importance of facing what was to come, and little did she know, the question Samantha posed was merely the opening of doors to her own fears and desires she had yet to confront. What hidden truths awaited her in this pursuit of becoming? Sarah tightened her grip on the edge of the table, her heart pounding as she faced Samantha, whose smirk felt like a challenge thrown right at her. The laughter of the children faded into a distant echo, replaced by an oppressive quiet that felt electric with tension. The self-assured leader she had begun to embody wavered under the scrutiny of an old adversary. "Is that what you think leaders do? Pull on heartstrings?" Sarah managed, her voice steadier than her nerve suggested. Low murmurs among the children coated her words, reflecting their anticipation, curiosity intermingled with concern. This was no longer just a question about storytelling techniques or workshop structure, it was a revelation about her very identity. In Samantha's gaze, Sarah saw a reflection of all the doubts that had once consumed her. But could she use this moment as an impetus for growth instead? What if she took this confrontation, shaped it, twisted it into something productive? For a brief moment, uncertainty clouded her thoughts, but clarity slowly emerged, drawing on the many stories she had heard that day. "Maybe leaders do connect emotionally with people," she replied, her legs feeling steadier beneath her, emboldened by the children's eager eyes. "But there's strength in connection, Samantha's strength I found in sharing my story. It's what makes us human." The silence in the room shifted, opening a space for possibilities. Samantha's smirk faltered, her expression twisting into something more ambiguous. Sarah seized the opportunity. She had glimpsed her potential, a potential not just to inspire the children but also to reclaim her own narrative from the confines of doubt. "Do you remember when you felt scared to share your own story, Samantha?" she asked, framing her voice with a gentler tone, almost coaxing. "Was it easy to open up then?" The question hung in the air, a mirror held up to Samantha's own experiences. For a heartbeat, the dominant energy shifted, and Sarah could feel the tension in the room begin to ebb. She stepped closer to the children, their presence reinforcing her resolve. "I believe in the power of stories. They shape our understanding of ourselves and each other. Isn't that what leadership is about, connecting to teach, to listen?" As she spoke, she saw her passion begin to rekindle the conversation. One by one, the children, buoyed by her resolve, chimed in, filling the room with tales of triumph over fear, of how sharing made them stronger. The crescendo of voices filled the space, illuminating her newfound role as a mentor. She realized that true leadership was more than commanding authority, it was about inspiration, connection, and vulnerability. As laughter returned, Sarah caught a glimpse of Samantha's eyes, narrowing with something that looked decidedly less amused and more contemplative. Perhaps she could question, challenge, or undermine Sarah's position, but Sarah would not relinquish her power without a fight. In that moment, a swell of determination surged within Sarah. She recognized that gaining authority wasn't merely about winning battles of wit but about earning respect by standing firm in her values. She had to continue nurturing her own evolution. After all, the journey toward confidence was filled with waves of uncertainty. The children erupted in applause, celebrating the collective narrative they had just woven together. Each clapping hand propelled Sarah's spirits higher, a palpable reminder of the connectivity they had all created. "What's next, Sarah?" one child shouted above the noise, hopeful curiosity painting her energetic feature. Sarah felt the chatter hush around her, the eyes now reflecting active engagement, anticipation for the journey ahead. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with endless possibilities. What would come next? How could she continue to expand her influence and her own confidence? It was time to plan the next step, but as she opened her mouth to speak, she noticed Samantha stepping back, the laughter fading and replaced by a calculating glare. In that moment, as the applause faded, a new question emerged beyond the children's eagerness: would she be able to secure this newfound courage in the face of opposition? And would she rise above the past that still lingered, or would she become entangled once more in self-doubt? The echoes of their applause faded into whispers, and as she prepared to offer her vision for their adventures ahead, Sarah understood this was simply the beginning of a greater journey, one filled with challenges waiting, subtle yet powerful, just around the corner. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as the lingering silence stretched, punctuated only by the children's bubbling energy beside her. They were waiting for her next words, seeking guidance, inspiration, something she felt beginning to crystallize within her. She had weathered the storm with Samantha, but now was the time to cement her newfound authority. "Next, we venture deeper into our stories," Sarah announced, the conviction in her voice drawing the children's undivided attention. "Let us each write down something we've never shared before, a secret or a fear, something that holds power over us." The air thickened with curiosity and trepidation. She was asking them to explore the very edges of their comfort zones, mirroring her own recent metamorphosis. It was an enticing thought: if they could confront their insecurities, perhaps so could she. Engaging in this shared vulnerability would create a sacred space where growth could flourish. As the children began to scribble in their notebooks, Sarah's thoughts turned inward. Panic skittered along her spine. Could she lead by example? She too had fears, layers still entangled in her past. Would sharing a piece of herself diminish her authority or solidify it? She walked to the large whiteboard and wrote, "What holds you back?" Turning back towards the group, she faced the sea of expectant faces, her own fears pooling in her stomach. "I'll go first," she declared, though her heart protested the decision. "I often feel like I'm not enough. Like no matter how hard I try, I can't measure up to what others expect of me." The admission escaped her lips like confetti, the lightness of sharing contrasting with the weight it had always carried alone. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the children. They didn't see their instructor as a figure above them, they saw someone relatable, fallible. One child raised his hand, enthusiasm bursting forth. "But Sarah, look at what you just did. You helped all of us, so you are enough." The affirmation sent warmth pulsing through her, a life vest cast in the midst of tumultuous seas. Their voices echoed around her, igniting a spark within that she hadn't realized had dimmed. They were her mirror, reflecting a strength she had never fully acknowledged in herself. As the workshop progressed, Sarah witnessed the power of storytelling transform doubt into solidarity. One child shared a fear of speaking in front of the class, another revealed a personal struggle with feeling unwanted at times. Each revelation wove their experiences tighter, creating an intricate tapestry of understanding. Sarah saw the children connecting on levels she yearned to foster. However, as she facilitated discussions, her mind drifted back to Samantha. The antagonistic glances still lingered. Was Samantha watching? Would she swoop in again, armed with barbs designed to unravel Sarah's emerging confidence? The thought flickered in her mind like a warning light, but this time, it ignited more than fear. "Leadership isn't just about guiding others," Sarah spoke up, her voice steady as she found her footing again. "It's about standing tall in our truth, even when faced with challenges. I believe we all have the power to uplift and support one another." With each word, she felt herself solidify into this new role, transforming from the timid figure she used to be into a beacon for the kids. They were building something extraordinary together, a resilient narrative that would lean on vulnerability as strength, but in the corner of her eye, she spotted Samantha. There was an intensity in her demeanor, a calculating gaze that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The old adversary had merely retreated to regroup, awaiting the right moment to strike. Deep down, Sarah felt a challenge rising within her, and it twisted with her determination. As the session closed, the child who had encouraged her faced Sarah with a question that cut through the shallow calm. "Will you share more with us, Sarah? We want to support you too." And with that, a flood of uncertainty washed over her again. Would revealing further pieces of her story be a strength, or would it hand Samantha an advantage? The confrontation had jolted something inside her, and now it boiled toward the surface, fizzling with urgency. In the heart of the gathering, Sarah grasped the weight of the moment. The stakes were rising. She needed to decide, would she protect herself and risk losing their cherished trust, or delve deeper into authentic leadership, bearing the possibility of vulnerability. The room was quiet, awaiting her response, but Sarah's thoughts were spinning. Each option outlined roads of confrontation and potential pain. As she prepared to respond, she could feel the potential for transformation crackling with energy. The moment hung heavily, laden with unspoken promises and fears, but which road would she take? The choice was hers, one that could either solidify her newfound identity or unravel it. What lay beyond this moment would forever shape her journey. Sarah felt the weight of the room pressing down on her, every gaze fixed expectantly on her. The children's eyes were wide, mirroring her own uncertainty. This singular moment held the power to redefine her relationships with them, not just as a leader but as a person with whom they could connect on a deeper level. She took a breath, drawing strength from the children's encouraging smiles. "What scares me the most," she began, her voice gaining clarity with each word, "is the fear of being vulnerable." It was a truth she had long cloaked in bravado. "For a long time, I believed that showing my fears made me weak, that I had to be perfect to be a good leader. But I've learned that real strength is in sharing our struggles. It's in stumbling together and lifting each other up where we find our true power." A ripple of understanding washed through the children, their pens pausing over pages. No longer did Sarah feel like a lone island in a sea of expectations. She was part of a community, and vulnerability was the bridge they would cross together. In that moment, she remembered the dream she had long suppressed. Writing. Creativity had always been her refuge, yet she had neglected it in her pursuit of perfection. It dawned on Sarah that this workshop wasn't merely about guiding the children, it was also an opportunity to guide herself back to her roots. She made a silent promise to herself: she would nurture her passion for writing alongside these kids. "Let us make a pact," she proposed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Let us create a book of our fears, our dreams, and our stories. Together, we will collect and celebrate our journeys." Excitement buzzed in the space, contagious as the children leaned in closer. The idea ignited a fire in her. Sarah felt lighter, liberated from the burdens of past criticisms. This was her chance to shape her narrative and help others do the same while honoring their experiences in the process. It would require her to be open, not just sharing her fears but embracing the messiness of life that often felt so difficult to acknowledge. Yet, even amid this burst of inspiration, a shadow loomed in her periphery. Samantha's presence gnawed at her confidence, whispering doubts in her ear. The notion that her vulnerability could be weaponized against her lingered like a storm cloud. Would Samantha exploit these new sentiments of openness? The question loomed larger than before, but the realization that she could be strong in her truth began to push through the tendrils of fear. Ready to solidify her commitment, Sarah addressed the children again, her tone steady. "Writing down our stories won't just be for us. We will share them with the world. This is about breaking our silence. Our fears are no longer our burdens to carry alone." The children's enthusiasm was palpable, energy surged through the room as they responded with excitement. She witnessed the prospect of healing in their budding expressions, their hesitant smiles turning into eager nods. She had instilled hope in their hearts, and they were ready to take the leap alongside her, but just as the mood transformed into one of anticipation, she glimpsed Samantha again, lurking near the doorway. The disdain in Samantha's face was unmistakable, her narrow eyes filled with a knowing glimmer that sent chills down Sarah's spine. Could Samantha truly hide behind the guise of professionalism while setting traps alongside her? As she deepened her focus toward the children around her, Sarah determined she had a choice to make: to let Samantha's negativity shape her narrative or to stand firm in her commitment to vulnerability and authenticity. The moment felt electric, each child a reminder that she was supported. Yet, with Samantha's presence, she could not entirely shake the sense of looming confrontation. The session ended with positive energy swirling in the air, but as the children shared ideas for their stories, Sarah's thoughts veered toward the finality of tonight. Will Samantha strike when she least expected it, using hidden knowledge against her? As Sarah walked the children to the door, each farewell filled with high spirits, her heart pulsed with a mix of anticipation and dread. Would she continue to embrace her newly solidified self, or would she have to face an unexpected challenge from the very woman she'd begun to redefine herself against? In the silence that followed, Sarah found herself at yet another crossroads. The journey toward vulnerability was illuminating, but how would she combat the darkness that threatened to seep into her light? The night ahead seemed heavy with uncertainty, and as she closed the door behind the last child, she sensed the familiar tremor of fear. Would she let it spiral into submission, or could she wield it as fuel for her growth? The sound of the closing door lingered in the quiet space, amplifying the tumult of Sarah's thoughts. The exhilaration she felt moments ago clashed with an encroaching anxiety as she noticed the dim lighting in the hallway unsettlingly throw shadows that danced menacingly against the walls. With each step toward her car, she felt a tightening knot in her stomach. Samantha's presence lingered in her mind like an unwelcome guest. Finding respite behind her steering wheel, Sarah sat in the surreal afterglow of the workshop. The joyful faces of the children flashed through her thoughts, but with them came the reality of Samantha. As she revved the engine, she wrestled with the contradictions in her heart, the desire to lead openly against the instinct to protect herself from potential betrayal. What had once been a simple act of writing now evolved into something greater, a battleground of wills, her resolve on one side, Samantha's manipulations on the other. She knew she had to strengthen her defenses against any intimidation, but the prospect felt daunting. What if the very expression of who she was became a weapon against her? As she drove through familiar streets, the golden hues of sunset had transformed into the cloak of dusk. The banal sights of home blended into an atmospheric blur, reflecting her inner chaos. She mused over the pact made with the children to share their fears while her own felt like an exposed nerve, throbbing with uncertainty. Would the writing sessions be tainted by her own trepidation? Her feelings of belonging were rooted in fear, not solidarity. Arriving home, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of a transformative decision. Would she allow herself to become emboldened by this newfound vulnerability, or would she retreat under the weight of doubt? The thought that writing had always been her sanctuary returned to her, calling out amid the rising storm in her mind. Perhaps writing could be more than a mere process. It could be her armor, settling at her table. The blank page before her felt like a canvas of possibility. Each word could fortify her spirit, each story could rebuild what doubts threatened to destabilize. She grasped her pen, hesitated, and began to write, the ink flowing like a lifeline. She poured out her fear of Samantha, her irritation towards being judged, and her yearning for freedom through her own narratives. Just as the words started to breathe life back into her spirit, a sharp ping broke her focus. The piercing sound of a notification drew her back into an unwelcome reality. It was a message from Samantha, tinged with the unmistakable tone of condescension. "Hope you're ready for tomorrow. They always say what goes up, must come down." The implication in those words felt like a sharp jab, piercing through the veil of her determination. Sarah's heart raced. Samantha was not merely lurking in the shadows, she was taking action. With a mix of dread and defiance coursing through her veins, Sarah realized the moment had come to confront the dark shadows that lingered just outside her light. How could she transform this anxiety into the very power she wished to claim? The writing, the pact, the children, everything had to align in her favor as she prepared herself to face Samantha head-on. The challenge loomed large, yet she sensed she was no longer defined solely by her fears. Perhaps the first step in embracing vulnerability was recognizing the moments when it could be her strength, acting as armor instead of allowing it to become an open wound. Rising from her chair, Sarah felt a layer of resolve envelop her. It was time to turn her words into action. How would she confront Samantha in a way that asserted her leadership without dimming her light? The answer felt just out of reach but flickered like a distant star, waiting for her to traverse the darkness toward it. With the echoes of a silent promise lingering in her heart, Sarah understood she was on the verge of an unprecedented confrontation, one that would shape not only her journey but also the culture that surrounded it. The moment of truth was approaching, and she would not back down. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the scattered papers on Sarah's table, remnants of her late-night writing session. Each sheet reflected a piece of her tumultuous journey, a collection of fears transformed into raw, unfiltered prose. As she sipped her coffee, she allowed herself to reflect on the power she had unearthed through her words. The act of writing had become her sanctuary, yet the reminder of Samantha's threat still lingered in her mind. With a determined exhale, Sarah pulled her notebook close, flipping through her notes. What had initially felt like a frantic outpouring now looked like the roadmap of a strategy. She needed to align her thoughts into something actionable that would prepare her to face Samantha. What if the confrontation could be her defining moment, not just for herself, but for the children whose stories she was fostering? Sarah paused, realizing the duality of her situation. She was terrified yet invigorated. It was a testament to the internal struggle she had navigated, a contradiction she needed to harness. She had to walk into that meeting not as a victim of intimidation but as a catalyst for change. Before heading to the workshop, Sarah made a conscious decision to refine her message. She would anchor herself in authenticity, fueling her words with the courage she had cultivated. As she wrote down key points she wished to convey, she found clarity in her mission. The children's voices needed to be heard, and she would be their champion. Instead of allowing Samantha's barbs to wound her, Sarah would turn them into stepping stones, elevating her commitment to the children's dreams above any personal misgivings. Samantha's message still echoing in her mind, Sarah challenged herself. How could she methodically dismantle the anxiety that Samantha's looming presence conjured in her? She began to enumerate her skills, recalling moments from her past where she had stood firm in the face of adversity. Volunteering during her college years, coordinating with others in chaotic circumstances, and finding coherence when life threatened to spiral. All these instances highlighted her capacity to lead, whether she acknowledged it or not. As she drove toward the workshop, she visualized the scene that awaited her, the familiar room filled with children eager to share their fears and dreams. They were counting on her to take the first step toward authenticity and vulnerability. Could she, in this pivotal moment, set a powerful precedent? The thought galvanized her, and with it, her resolve deepened. Upon arriving, she noticed the room's ambience buzzing with laughter and excitement. The children were already gathered, their energy palpable. Sarah took a moment, centered herself, and inhaled deeply. She wasn't just stepping into a room today, she was stepping into her purpose. "All right everyone, let us get started," she called out, her voice steady. With each hello, she could feel the walls of doubt begin to dissolve. In this space, she was simply Sarah, someone genuinely interested in the voices waiting to be unspooled. As the workshop progressed, she introduced an exercise that invited the kids to share their own feelings, their own fictional tales juxtaposed against their genuine emotions. Observing their vulnerability seemed to ignite the room further. Each child opened up, unearthing a depth of storytelling that astounded her. It felt like a beautiful echo of her own struggles, reminding her why she had undertaken this journey. Yet, just as she began to trust the process, her phone vibrated at the edge of the table. A message from Samantha again. "I hope you enjoy your little storytelling session. But remember, scripts can always be rewritten. I'm just giving you a gentle reminder." The words thudded in her chest, but instead of succumbing to despair, she felt a spark of defiance ignite within her. Samantha's attempts to undermine her only reinforced her purpose. Who was she, if not the protagonist of her own narrative? Listening to the children's laughter, sensing their burgeoning confidence swelled around her, Sarah understood. This one message was merely a drop in an ocean of potential. The battle wasn't solely external, it was an internal one where she must confront not just Samantha, but every uncertainty that had been planted over time. And as she stood before her audience of bright, eager faces, a labyrinth of emotions spiraled within her. Would she stand firm, revealing her true capabilities, or would she falter under the weight of intimidation? The moment had arrived, and the stakes had never been higher. She inhaled deeply, readying for what was next, the confrontation not just with Samantha, but to redefine herself, to become unyielding in her quest for empowerment. Would her resolve hold strong against the hidden tide of manipulative words? Little did she know, the true confrontation lay ahead, but for now, she stood amidst her children, poised to transform her fear into resilience. The buzz of excitement filled the room as Sarah Bennett faced the children gathered before her. This was not merely a workshop. It was her transformation, it was their shared journey. Each child radiated possibility, eager to explore the stories that longed to escape them. The room felt charged, a sanctuary formed by their collective courage and vulnerability. With renewed conviction, Sarah introduced the day's theme, discovering the power embedded in their stories. "Today, we're not just going to share, we're going to channel our fears into stories that inspire and empower us," she said, her voice firm and unwavering. As she spoke, she felt an exhilarating shift within herself, shedding the last vestiges of doubt that Samantha had cast upon her. The children exchanged excited glances, their young faces alive with anticipation. The energy surged, and even as Sarah noticed the familiar tightness in her chest, she pressed on. One by one, they shared their fears, dreaming aloud of worlds filled with bravery, wonder, and uninhibited joy. Sarah guided them, her hands animated in gestures as she wove their narratives into a collective tapestry, a vibrant display of resilience where her own fears melted into their enthusiasm. "Remember," she reminded them, "sharing our fears doesn't make us weak, it makes us stronger. When we give voice to our struggles, we reclaim our narrative, we give it wings." An unexpected voice called out from the back, "Are you afraid of Samantha?" It was a brave child, mirroring a sentiment that pulsed in the air. Sarah felt the question like a sudden chill. Standing there at the center, not as a victim but as a vessel of empowerment, she paused briefly, weighing the importance of her response. "Fear can sometimes linger like a shadow," she began, her gaze steady. "But it's how we confront that fear that defines us." She felt a surge of authority wash over her, transformative power coursing through her veins. No longer an echo of her grandfather's legacy, she was forging her own path, a librarian turned mentor who inspired young minds to reach for their dreams. In that moment, an inner strength emerged, revealing itself through her words. "I might fear what others think, but I know I have the right to create my own story. And so do all of you. The room erupted in nods of understanding. Sarah's heart swelled as she witnessed their reflections in her own journey. There, amid their laughter and camaraderie, she unearthed her truth, the confidence to step firmly into her role as their guide, as a woman who embraces not only her struggle, but also her voice. At that moment, Sarah caught movement from the corner of her eye. Samantha was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, a scowl etched across her face. The tension was palpable. But rather than retreating into fear, Sarah felt galvanized. This was her arena now, filled with life and positivity. The shadow of intimidation was no longer daunting but compelling. Samantha's voice raked through the air, saturated with condescension. "Wow, quite the motivational speaker you've become, haven't you?" There was an air of confrontation, yet Sarah stood firm, rooted in her resolve. Her heart thundered not with anxiety but with an exhilaration born of purpose. "Thank you for the compliment, Samantha. Growing has never been more important," Sarah shot back, her voice unwavering. "Isn't that what we all aim for? Besides, you should know it's much more difficult to lift others than to bring them down." The room crackled with energy, a tangible acknowledgement of her transformation. The children's cheers mixed with uncertainty hanging in the air, solidifying her newfound authority. In this pivotal moment, Sarah saw not just herself but a mentor rising to challenge the doubts and molds the world aimed to confine her within. As the workshop drew to a close, they discussed plans to publish their collective stories, a book filled with vulnerabilities, strengths, and shared hopes. The project was a reflection of their intertwined journeys, signaling a commitment to carrying each other's voices forward. Beyond that room. In the days that followed, Sarah faced each new workshop with solid confidence. Each session proved fruitful, bringing in more and more children eager to share their stories. She had transformed from a contemplative librarian to a valued mentor, igniting a fervor within the community for storytelling and invention. What had once been a fearful endeavor now blossomed into a resounding triumph. The journal from that dusty attic lay beside her, filled with notes reflecting not just her grandfather's legacy but also her own evolution. She recognized her accomplishments and established position as a community leader and advocate, recognized by those who once overshadowed her. Embracing the newfound strength created through unity, Sarah had conquered the shadows of self-doubt. Vibrant, effusive confidence marked her every step each time she entered that workshop. Today, she was not merely an interpreter of stories, she was a creator, proactive, satisfied, and proudly shaping her narrative. With an unwavering smile and a heart bursting with purpose, Sarah embraced her journey fully. She had risen above her fears and doubts, she had forged an indivisible path combining creativity and authenticity. As the children flourished, so too did she, and for the first time, she reflected on how far she'd come, not just for herself, but for them. This was her victory, a well-deserved fulfillment of potential, a clear indication that she was more than enough. Now is the time for you to be part of this transformative journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure more empowering narratives reach those in need. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible journey below. The community is waiting to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration.